So I found some free time to work on this thing. I'll be putting in the crankshaft and pistons and rods and who knows what else. We'll see. I'm going to begin by applying assembly lube on these bearings. Then I'm going to put these thrust washers and finally the crankshaft is going in. So they're nice and gentle. Okay, I have the crank in place, spins freely. Don't want to really spin it because of those thrust washers. See how they come up? That one came up, see? Once the caps are on, or the main girdle, it'll keep it in place. Other than that, it spins freely, no problem. So I just got done applying the ARP fastener assembly lube, the Molly lube. I applied it on the threads. Then I just run these down hand tight. Okay, I have all the main studs bottomed out and hand tightened. Next is the main bearing caps. I double check these to make sure there's no grooves or plastic gauge or anything like that. First, I'm gonna add some assembly lube. Come on. And then next, I'm gonna set this by hand. It's kind of hard doing it with one hand. The arrow points towards the timing belt side. This is when I need a tripod. There it is. And then the washers and nuts for the main studs. Okay, so now I'm torquing these ARP main bolts. I'm using my snap-on torque wrench, digital torque wrench, and I'm going to torque them to 60 foot-pounds. Here are the pistons and rods ready to go in. I just got done installing the piston rings, and yes, they are gapped. I showed that on a previous video. I don't remember how many months ago. So far I have piston 2, 3, and 4 in. They're not torqued yet, they're just snug. And I got number 1 to go in. Here's piston 1, ready to go in with lube. And I'm pointing the dot towards the timing belt side. Just like that. Then I grab my dead blow and gently tap down. Just like that. It's in. This is kind of hard to do with one hand. And then I just push it all the way down. Last is the connecting rod cap. I use motor oil for the threads on the connecting rod. There's 1. And 2. Now time to torque them. In case anyone wanted to know, this is the way I pointed my piston rings. That's straight from the manual. So I went ahead and torqued the connecting rod bolts to 15 foot-pounds. And I also put a little dot right there, because the manual says after the 15 foot-pounds to do a 90-degree turn. Now my torque wrench reads angle, so I wanted to see how accurate this was. And it was pretty damn close. I mean, I did number 3 and number 2 and 3, and they were basically dead on 90 degrees. Alright, all the caps are now torqued. And she spins free. I'm ready for this thing. I took the bottom end off the engine stand in order to get this rear main seal on. Would have been easier if I had the engine hoist. And now the fun part, putting the engine block back on the stand by myself with no engine hoist. This is when I wish I had some help. Here's a look at the front case, ready to go in. Notice I plugged this already. Put some JB weld on there. Nice and clean. And also I replaced the crankshaft seal right here. This is the one it came with. I put the OEM one, and along with the oil pump seal. I also put an OEM seal there, and then the sprocket is torqued, ready to go in. I'm also going to be using the OEM front case gasket along with the oil filter gasket, both OEM. And before I forget, these 2 dowel pins go to the front case. One goes here. Oh, I need 2 hands. And another one here. And that's what they look like installed. One there and one here. Here's a front case gasket. I normally spray this with copper spray. Right here. Let it sit for about a minute. Just one light coat, and then I put it on there and torque it down. Some people don't like to use that copper stuff, but it seems to work for me very well. Here's a gasket with 1 layer of copper spray on both sides. It's being held by the dowel pins here and here. Now time to install it. Just putting a little bit of oil here for the O-ring. And a little bit on here. As you can see, I have all of the bolts sticking out. It just helps me know which one goes where. And very carefully I place it in without trying to drop any of them, which I probably will. And there goes one. So I went ahead and torqued the front case bolts and the oil filter housing ones. Put a little white mark to remind me that they're torqued. Since I'm not going to be running the balance shafts, I won't be needing this. So I have this little guy here, the spacer. And the sprocket for the timing belt. I'm just gonna snug this by hand for now. Next I'll be installing the crank angle sensor. Just like that. I'm not really sure if that spacer is OEM or not, but just rotating it to make sure it clears it just fine. It came with the Balance Shaft Elite kit that I bought a long time ago, and I'm just now using it. I didn't use it on my other build, so I figured why not. Here's the water pump. It's a Gates Racing water pump, but I'm going to be using the Mitsubishi OEM gasket. Normally they're blue, but this one's gray. This gasket feels better than the one this water pump came with, that paper one. I'm going to add a little bit of Loctite on all of these water pump bolts, just in case they want to back out. I'll leave that one for last since I'm still missing that bracket. I'm torquing these bolts to 132 inch-pounds, which is 11 foot-pounds. I got 4 water pump bolts torqued to 11 foot-pounds. This one's loose because I'm missing that bracket, and it gets a different torque. I think it's 14 foot-pounds, maybe 16 foot-pounds. I have to look. I'm gonna stop here for today. Today's actually July 30th. The DSM Evo shootout in Ohio is about 17 days away, which I'll be attending. Oh, I won't be taking you, but I'll be out there. That might be the next video. Or maybe installing the cylinder head might be the next one. We'll see.